Hi, this is Bonnie, and today I am going to talk about my week working with the Spolia mixed with the Supra Oracle. And I also wanted to go a little in detail about my deck selection process and how I make my matches, how I match my tarot with my oracle. I actually worked with this combination about 2 weeks ago. It was week of the teacher, and I'll get into like why I'm working with the specific weeks and what these all mean and break it on down. But first I wanted to go through the actual like how these decks worked together. So this is a rather chunky deck. This is the Spolia. It is a 94 card deck, so it is quite massive. It's loosely based on an Italian deck called the Minchiate, which had 97 cards. So this uses 94 cards, and what the Spolia does is it uses, it not only has the typical 78 cards, but it has one card for each of the astrological signs and one card for each of the elements. So that is where that is. It is on this really thick cardstock. It does take a little time to kind of loosen up because it is quite a chunky deck. For my hands, it's kind of tough to get my hands around. I have to kind of do a little, like 2 piles, but I honestly love this deck. Spolia means rubble, and a lot of the reason why they chose this kind of, you know, this word for this title is because we're living in a time where things are kind of falling apart, dismantling, and being restructured. So all of these norms are breaking down. A lot of things are breaking down. And it's kind of crazy because like working with it, particularly in these times, just felt very natural. And it just felt like fitting in with the theme of the week. It just really is very tied to current events. This deck really just was more philosophical, and it was very much like tied to the world, tied to current events, tied to things happening around us. So the world around us and around, all of these things that are breaking down in society, I felt that through my experience working with this deck for that week. The other thing that was really, it was just super insightful to work with this. I also really just love the imagery. It's collage, but it's so intricate to me. It's so intricate, and it's just stunning to me. I like how it has these levels of alchemy and has these levels of like fine art and mythology and the use of color, the use of, I love this devil card. The use of in some cards, there are some specific flowers and color palettes that are used, and it's just so very thoughtful and there's so many layers in this deck, and you could learn so much just by like studying this deck. If I were to do a deep dive study with this deck, it would take a while because there are just so many references in here. So it is very tied to the world. It's very tied to all of that, and I really appreciated my working with it. And I matched that up, and it's actually kind of cool because when I bought the Spolia, I bought the Supra pretty much when I knew which week I would be working with this, because I intentionally wanted these two to be a match when I first bought it. So these two, now the thing about this deck, the Supra, and a lot of you have seen this. This is an Usi deck. It is so beautiful. It feels so nice. It has that beautiful linen, plain cardstock. The artwork is just, I love the artwork. It's just so stunning to me, and it's based on Jungian principles. So very psychological, very much about the man machine, um, a lot to do with psychology and how man affects the world around him. I would say if you are going to get this deck, I got the book that goes around along with it. The book is very helpful. The book is definitely super helpful. But I will say also, not only is the book very helpful, but this is also great for intuitive reading. Most of the time I pulled my messages together as a unit, and it just kind of, like the messages just kind of flowed. It just came to me, but I still looked at the book because I wanted to see what those Jungian principles were and just wanted to kind of learn a little bit more. Yeah, Deus Ex Machina. Yeah, these are just so beautiful. And this also is very tied to the site. I would say like this is tied to man's effect on the world, and like working with it with the Spolia, the Supra and the Spolia, is probably one of the most powerful combinations I've ever worked with. I think the two of them work so perfectly together in the sense that the Spolia is so tied to current events, and the Supra is so tied into humanity's effect on the current events, and it just made the most dynamic duo. I would say that if I were to give a personality to this deck combo, it would be the Grand Philosopher. Like this is a combination. I can't actually see these two decks working apart from each other. I can't see myself separating them. That's how I that's how together I feel these two are, is that they seem like they belong together, and they're perfect matches. I can't really see myself whipping out a totally different oracle to go with the Spolia down the road. I can't see that. I also can't see myself using these cards for, like, you know, just personal mundane readings. This is when you want to know about what's going on in the world, when you want to say like, hey universe, what's going on? And I didn't even ask any questions that were guided in that way. When I'm working with a new deck combo, I'm usually just asking, what do you have to tell me for today? And I let the cards speak to me, and I let them, like, through the course of the week, see what that narrative looks like. So it just kind of, like, when the first couple of days I'm working with a new combo, I'm like, is this talking about me? Is this talking about this area of my life? Sometimes it comes to me immediate, like I could see the message in terms of what it's trying to tell me. This combo made me kind of think for a couple of days, but once it was on a roll, it was on a roll. So I was going to tell you a little bit more also about how I do these matches and why I really like doing, why I really like matchmaking with my decks. Now, I used to just not read oracle cards at all. When I first started tarot, it was many, many years ago when I first started tarot, and oracle cards just really weren't a thing back then. And if they were more affirmational cards. I didn't really see too many oracle cards in the sense that we have them now, back in the day. So I also, like, when I got back into tarot about a year and a half or so, when I got back into tarot, when the cards came back to me, I was still kind of like, no, not gonna really work with oracles. And then somehow something flipped, and I started to match my tarot decks with oracle decks, and I have some oracle decks that are very, very much agnostic and can work with many different combinations, and I have some like this where I know I can't really, you know, work with different things. And the reason why I think that's where my day job kind of matches with like what I'm like how I'm doing my matchmaking, because by day I'm a corporate recruiter, so I match people with job openings. I kind of find it funny. I'm a design recruiter, so I know like aesthetic and what the client wants and stuff like that. So it's just kind of matching two energies for me is how I do it. And not only that, but I utilize um, the like there's this book, The Secret Language of Birthdays, and also The Secret Language of Relationships. I'm sure you've seen it. And the way that it breaks down the different decans of the astrological cycle. So each week has its own theme to it. So there's like week of the teacher, there's week of last week was week of this past week was week of the natural, and I work with a totally different combination that matched with the energies of that. This coming week that we're going into, the Taurus Gemini cusp, is the cusp of energy, and there are different personality characteristics that fit with these weeks. So I'm going to give you an example because I don't have my write-up, because I started to put in a notebook like the characteristics of a week as I'm doing my deck planning. So, and I planned this before I started to kind of write down. So last week was week of the natural, and a lot of the personality characteristics, there was fantasy, attraction, family, chivalry, loyalty, like a sense of duty and loyalty, could be seen of as naive at times. And I picked for last week, I picked my for the tarot, I picked my Hanson Roberts. So I picked the Hanson Roberts because I felt like that really matched with that energy. So to match with that, I took the natural part, some more Taurus energy, because the last week that we were just getting out of was still Taurus. So it was Taurus. We're still in Taurus right now. But I picked the Hedge Witch Botanical Oracle to match with that kind of natural, earthy kind of energy to balance with the Hanson Roberts and all of that. And it proved to be a really good pairing. This coming week that we're going into is considered the cusp of energy, and that's Taurus and Gemini. So this particular week, and I not only look at the book The Secret Language of Birthday, I also do some other research too as to the decan personalities. So this is a week where these are natural entertainers. They have a lot of energy. They have a youthful spirit. They love to talk. They have endless energy. They're eternal adolescents. And I decided, and I don't have it in front of me right now, so I'm not going to get it, but I am going to do I'm just going to do a dynamic duo video after the week is over. But I picked the New Wave Tarot, which I was doing a little bit of a flip through the other, like on one of my other videos, and I paired that with the Rock and Roll Oracle that I just got too. And I thought that fit with that cool, like, natural entertainer, likes to talk, likes to be the life of the party, wants to be the popular kid. I just felt like that fit with that kind of energy. So we'll see how that works. But I think it's kind of interesting that I'm having this kind of structure in terms of matchmaking. And then there are going to be we're now going to be getting into a cycle in the coming weeks where you're gonna have some weeks that have dual energies of different decans, so two different decans sitting in 1 week. So that's what makes this fun, because next year some things could be kind of switched around. There could be other combinations, or I could be thinking that different combinations might work better. So this is where I get into the psychology of my collection, because I really do love that matchmaking element and really like to kind of see what goes with what energy works with the energy of the week that we're in. And then I think what I also want to do down the road is really look at the moon cycles too, and look at like transits and really get into like the astrological components. This is just like hitting the tip of the iceberg for me, as I'm studying more. But it's just my little quirk, because I know some people like to, you know, pick their decks seasonally. Some people pick their decks based on mood. Some people pick specific decks for because of comfort levels and stuff like that. This is just a way for me to get like tied to the energy of the where we're at right now and see how that relates. So it's just kind of my own little thing. Another thing I do too is when I also pick entirely different decks for the challenges that I work on, and that's more based on the themes of the challenges. So I'll pick decks based on what the theme of the challenge is and what I see like when I'm looking at the prompts. So I kind of do that a little bit more, like more not as scientific. I do that a little bit more based on gut and more based on like, okay, this month this month we're working on this, like this is what the theme of this challenge is. This deck matches the theme. Okay, cool. So that's kind of like a little bit of insight into like how I'm working with decks, and how I'm pairing things together a little bit more in detail. Why I like doing it, because it's just fun for me. But like I also love to see how people are, picking. How do you pick your decks? Like, do you go through a specific kind of like, oh, this is new, I'm going to work with this week, or this is where my mood is taking me? Just kind of curious how you, like, especially if you have a larger collection, how you pick what you're going to work with, and that's always interesting to me. And also, I'd love to see your dynamic duos. Do you work with tarot and oracle in a pairing, and how do you like to pair your decks together? That's always kind of interesting, and what kind of dynamic duos you have in your collection. So I'm rambling at this point, so thank you so much for taking the time and listening and watching, and until next time, thanks.